May I please invite everybody to switch off the camera except the candidate, so only our candidate is visible during her presentation. Thank you very much. Almost 10 o'clock. Well, and it's 10 o'clock. The live stream has started. Dear candidate, the floor is yours. And please unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to my colleagues and family and friends who are watching. By now, you know, my research is on early child marriages. And before I start, I need to define what child marriage is. This is an old one, but still relevant definition of child marriage by UN, which is the formal union when one or both parties are below the age of 18 years. This is a universal definition, but every country has their own definitions. And in case of Pakistan, which is the geographical location of my research, child marriage is 16 or below for girls and 18 for boys. One girl, recent statistics show that one girl gets married every 3 seconds before her 18th birthday. So it's about child marriages. And by the time I finish this presentation, somewhere in the world, 200 young girls will be getting married before their 18th birthday, more likely in Asia or sub-Saharan Africa. Doing research, or this is an issue of importance because girls, when married at an early age, they are more vulnerable to poverty, they are more vulnerable to health issues, intimate partner violence, and they tend to discontinue their education, which then runs as a circle of poverty, and these things keep happening in circle. Before I jump into what my research actually is and my findings, I need to make a few confessions and locate myself in the research. So I'm from Pakistan, and I was a teen bride myself, and I'm a feminist. So the things you'll be hearing next for the next 1 hour, they'll be coming from a feminist who did her research in a small village in Pakistan as a divorced single mother. So my research might have some limitations and all, but it was a really difficult context to work in. And when I started reading literature about this topic, I got to know that there is a scarcity of literature about decision-making processes that lead to early child marriage. There is less literature about different roles each of the stakeholders play in such decision-making processes. And there's almost no academic literature that posts its recommendations for policy and practice that is based on in-depth field data. Therefore, my research question, which fills all the gaps that I mentioned in the literature, my research question is: how do relevant state and non-state women's empowerment and gender equality policies and programs relate to early marriage decision-making processes within families and across different caste groups? The theoretical framework of my research is quite a complicated one, with standpoint feminist theory as my meta theory, and Bronfenbrenner's ecological system theory as one of the micro theories, another micro theory by Bowen, that is family systems theory. And when I made this very nice theoretical framework of by merging these three theories, I still found that these three theories were that something was missing that could link to my context, my geographical context, and therefore I had to include or borrow some other concepts from other theories to make my theoretical framework inclusive, comprehensive. Therefore, I had to also include concepts of patriarchal bargain and ijtihad. And ijtihad basically means designing solutions based on Quran and Sunnah, which is relevant to Muslim countries and societies, for recent and very emerging problems related to anything. I also had to, my theoretical framework also builds on concepts of gender equality and women's empowerment. The methodology, so my research has elements of ethnography. I started with semi-structured review of literature, and then I went to the field, which is again a village in Punjab, Pakistan. And I spent 9 months in the village and did and a kind of ethnographic research. In total, I had 162 participants in my research, and the methods that I used include participant and non-participant observation, in-depth interviews, focus group discussions, spatial mapping, and transit walk. I also analyzed state and non-state policies that were relevant to women's empowerment, gender equality, and child marriage, to be specific. And the method I use to analyze my policies is a combination of critical frame analysis method and feminist analysis, feminist policy analysis method, and I call it feminist critical frame analysis method. I also analyzed work programs of 2 non-state organizations who were working in the field, in the village, to enhance women's empowerment and to bring gender equality and to control the prevalence of early child marriage. Coming to the findings of my research, so I have divided my research participants in 3 generations. Generation 1 is those of grandparents. Generation 2 is of parents and parents-in-law, and generation 3 is young people of marriageable age or unmarried people. In the first generation, so in this slide, I'm going to talk about how decisions take place about early marriage within families. So starting with paternal grandmother, I found that they have a lot of influence on on decision making about marriage of their grandchildren. When the bubbles emerge in red color, that means a very strong influence. When it is in blue color, that means medium influence. And when it is yellow color, that means no or very less influence. So the grandmothers had a very high level of influence on when and whom to marry in decisions about their grandchildren. So what I found out is that matchmaking was seen in the context of my research essentially as a women's job. The paternal grandfathers also could have a say in whom to marry decisions, but they only interfered in case they disagreed with their grandmothers, with their wives or grandmothers' decision. In the second generation, it was also like paternal grandfathers, that they had a say in whom to marry decision, but they only bothered if they disagreed with the decision their mother had made. Coming to mothers, they had a medium level of influence on when and whom to marry, but that was only in case if the mothers were financially independent of their husbands, or they have grown up and earning sons. So basically, it was finances that controlled the decision making. Other women, or some of them who were earning also, they might disagree with the decision the grandmother had made, but they might not stand against it because they feared domestic violence and sometimes divorce. Parents-in-law or the intended parents-in-law had a say in when to marry decision. It was a quite strong say, and lesser say in whom to marry decision, but they only decided on when to marry things depending on the readiness of their son. In the third generation, the intended brides had very less say in when to marry decisions and almost no say in whom to marry decisions. The intended groom had a strong say in when to marry decisions, and some of them also did say that they don't want to get married to this girl and want to get married to another girl. So they could also have a strong, a medium level of say in whom to marry decisions. And girl's elder's brother could also influence in whom to marry, but that is again in case if they disagree with the decision the grandmother had made. When I compared this decision-making pattern across caste groups, I found out that the pattern of decision-making is same across all the 4 caste groups in the village. But the drivers behind or the reasons behind early marriages were different. That also included honor and their flexible or rigid understanding of what honor and dishonor means. But they all had different, uh, among caste groups, they had different reasons of going for an early marriage of their daughters. I also asked my participants about how they see gender equality and women's empowerment. It was interesting to see that they thought women's empowerment as a very positive thing, and they associated to religion Islam, and they said that okay, Islam is the first religion that started women's empowerment and all. And when I asked them what women's empowerment according to them is, they said it is about respecting women and providing them everything at home, and allowing them to go out for formal education and letting them go outside for shopping or whatever, and letting them do paid jobs. And some of them also mentioned that the biggest empowerment is their reproductive power, and they are empowered because they can reproduce, and they can give birth to children which men cannot. So they are already empowered, and they are like goddesses. But when it came to gender equality, the participants were quite critical of the idea of gender equality, and they saw it as a Western idea. Um, and they defined it as women wanting to wear jeans and asking for equal rights as those of men, and going out needlessly also at night, and asking for equal pocket money as their boys to their brothers. Some more findings. So when I analyzed state and non-state policies, I found out that state policies lack cohesion because the definitions of child varied among policy to policy. There were at least 7 definitions of who a child is, which creates confusion not only in the policy but also in the mindsets of people. They also lack implementation because they are sometimes culturally insensitive. For example, the incident reporting mechanisms. They also lack societal support because they exclude some important stakeholders. For example, in case of my research, grandmothers. When I also analyzed non-state programs, I observed that they seem to undermine some critical stakeholders and overemphasize the others. For example, they overemphasize the agency of young girls, which in case of my research was really thin, but they undermine the power and agency of some critical stakeholders, for example, grandmothers. They also seemed to ignore the power dynamics of caste system in the community, which benefits some and further marginalizes the others. I have 4 conclusions in total. My first conclusion is that early marriage decision making needs to be seen beyond the father and family. Second, gender equality is perceived as a Western idea by my participants. However, women's empowerment is perceived as a culturally relevant and positive notion. Third, confusions related to the definition of child in early hinders the implementations of policies. And last, there is a need for collective ijtihad to build a consensus on minimum age of marriage, among other things. At the end, I have policy recommendations on multi-level. My first recommendation is an overarching one, which is for all levels, that is using the term minor marriage instead of child or early marriage, because the term child has emotional connotations. Also because confusion related to definition of child exists, and that confusion is translated into the mindsets of people. And third, the notion of early is too subjective to define and measure. Then I have policy recommendations for international policy and sustainable development goals, that is to consider marriage below 18 as forced and emphasize college education to delay the possibility of minor marriage. Second, for international and national NGOs working in Pakistan to make culturally sensitive projects so that they can yield better results by including all relevant stakeholders and consider caste variations. Third, for the government of Pakistan, I recommend unifying the definition of a child to 18 years for all genders. including women and female pronouns while they revise the policies and make new policies, simplifying the procedures for reporting child marriage, and increasing emphasis on access to school and college education to empower girls and delay the age of marriage. Last, for the Islamic world, I recommend forming an ijma and based on the principle of ijtihad, build a consensus on the ideal age of marriage according to the 21st century Islam. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I would like to invite everybody to switch on the camera again. And everybody has returned. And it's 10:15, so on time. Dear Rector, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I again welcome you to this special meeting of the Doctorate Board of the University of Amsterdam on the occasion of the Ph.D. defense by Mrs. Ajaz. I would like to start this meeting by introducing the promoter and the co-promoters. Promoter this morning is Professor Dwayita Gupta. Co-promoters are Dr. Nikki Pau and Dr. Esther Minema. Welcome to you, all working at the University of Amsterdam. Then we start the opposition, and I introduce to you now Professor Dr. Jenny Parks. She is Professor of Education, Gender and International Development Studies at the Institute of Education of the University College of London. Hers is the floor to start the opposition. Please, Dr. Parks.
Thank you. Hello, Nashia, and congratulations on your excellent work. I'm very happy to be here to speak with you. I wanted to start by saying you've written a very interesting thesis that makes a significant contribution to knowledge on early marriage decision-making in rural Pakistan. And I felt your analysis is sensitive and it's nuanced. And I really particularly found fascinating your analysis of how gender, generation and caste influence the attitudes, decisions and practices around marriage. And I also felt that a particular strength is the clear linkages to policy. And there are a range of insightful and valuable policy recommendations which stem from the research, which is very valuable. My question, I guess, follows on from this. I wondered about whether you could tell us a bit more about the contribution, the academic contribution to knowledge. In other words, what does your research add to the existing literature on early marriage?
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for really nice words about my research, and thank you for letting me clarify this issue of utmost importance. So when I was reading the literature about early and child marriages, generally and also specific to Pakistan, this is one of the gaps that I noticed. So all the literature, most of the literature was about what leads to early marriage and the negative consequences of early marriage and its relation to education and all. This kind of literature was quite there. What I found missing was, why do people opt for, why would parents want their daughters to get married early? And as I mentioned also during my presentation, I was also a teen bride. So it was really not possible for me to believe that, okay, when I was reading in the literature that people marry off their daughters so that there is one less mouths to feed and for economic reasons and due to poverty, it was hard for me to believe this, because I also saw my family, especially my father, but my parents having a lot of concern about my well-being and my happiness. So it was impossible for me to believe when I was reading in the literature that, okay, early marriages and child marriages happen because parents want their daughters to be less well off, and these are the negative consequences. I was really particularly interested in looking at why would parents, because despite knowing all the consequences and there can be bad things that happen and their girls won't be going to school anymore and they won't be economically independent and all, why would parents want their daughters to get married early? This was missing in the literature, and the contribution of my research is that it has really in-depth insights on the decision making processes. What are the factors that contribute to early and child marriage decision making processes, and who are the stakeholders involved? So that when we come to policy, so that when there are people who want to make policies, they can know the root causes of these things. So they know the decision making process well, which is my academic contribution indeed. And when we know the decision making process really well and in depth, only then we can make solutions and get rid of this practice.
Thank you very much. Mr. Parks, short comment or question, or are you satisfied with the answer?
I'm satisfied, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Then we go to the second opponent this morning. That is Professor Sarah Brakke. She's Professor of Sociology and Gender and Sexuality at the University of Amsterdam. Hers is the floor.
Thank you. Dear candidates, first, I would like to congratulate you with the accomplishment of your thesis. This thesis addresses an important topic, and I'm already using some of your recommendations, the important topic of minor marriage, and more in particular, the decision-making process that leads to child or early marriage and the roles of the different stakeholders in this process. You have identified important gaps in the knowledge in this respect. You just commented on that. And you have set up an appropriate fieldwork in circumstances which were not easy. You are clearly skilled at ethnographic work with a keen eye for the complexity of decision-making processes, which results in a thesis that sheds new light on these decision-making processes and also in a set of policy recommendations. My question pertains to your theoretical framework. So this is chapter 4, which is complex, as you have just shown all of us. It's complex, but I have to admit that it didn't always convince me at every step. And both on the level of the articulation of the different elements that you bring together, at times I thought that the articulation needed some more work. And also at the level of how you discuss some of these elements. So I would, for my question, like to focus on one of these elements of your framework, namely feminist standpoint epistemology or feminist standpoint theory. So there were certain terms that emerged in your discussion of standpoint theory, like I didn't note the pages, but at some moment there was a term essential or personality, which as terms I had trouble to connect to the impulse of standpoint thinking. But that aside, that's a little comment. My question is about the relationship between life experiences and knowledge. So at some point you suggest that knowledge based on life experiences cannot be accessed by people in a more privileged position. Yet it seems to me that if wanted and if the necessary work is done, knowledge can be accessed in the way that you worked hard to access knowledge that came of life experiences different from yours. And you have emphasized some of the similarities, but there are also clear differences between your life experiences and your interlocutors. So you actually did that work and you accessed, if we want to use that word, life experiences differently from yours. So standpoint epistemology, to me, is about how the production of knowledge occurs in relation to life experiences. And life experiences is not an essentialist category. Through living different experiences, we gain new kinds of knowledge. Also, a simple example in the so-called life-changing experiences of getting married or becoming a parent, as an example. So grounding knowledge in life experiences grounds it in something dynamic, which is, of course, deeply shaped by power relations and questions of positionality, but also those are dynamic. Power is dynamic, positionality is dynamic. So standpoint epistemology results in a complex understanding of positionality as something dynamic and complex, not to be reduced to identity. And all of this complexity, I find, really shines through in your thesis, in your empirical material. So I wanted, but not so much in your discussion of standpoint epistemology. And I wanted to ask you, this is my general question, if you could reflect, if you could go back to your fieldwork as a way of getting access to knowledge, as a way of dealing with knowledge produced by your interlocutors, you yourself producing knowledge on top of that. So go back to your fieldwork, your interlocutors' life experiences, and what does that experience of your fieldwork tell you about the relationship between life experiences and the production of knowledge?
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you so much for appreciating my research, and thank you so much for letting me speak about this. So when I went to the field, I went with an open mind, and I had no particular theory in mind. And even if I had, that was Bronfenbrenner's theory and not standpoint feminist theory. But my first visit to the field indeed told me that I'm going to use standpoint feminist theory because of my first interaction with my participants that I have also mentioned in a box in my research. The reason behind choosing standpoint feminist theory was that it was a general belief that I found to be existing in my field, is that women don't know about their lives. So there was the gatekeeper who was the first person we went to, and we told them that, okay, we want to be in the village to write a book and meet people and talk to them. So he said to me that, okay, start with my interview, because you won't find many old women in the village because they die early. Two, even if you meet them, they won't have time, and they won't be capable enough to give you interview and tell them about their lives, because they forget easily, and they are too preoccupied in other things and all. So he actually told me that he knows about women's life better than women themselves. The very moment I knew that, okay, I'm going to use standpoint feminist theory as my entering point to the research. Indeed, it has a relationship with participants and my lived experiences and production and of knowledge. So I wanted to access knowledge that my participants had, and their knowledge, not the knowledge that they get formally, but their knowledge was shaped indeed by their life experiences. I actually wanted to know about their life experiences, which was not knowledge for them, but precious knowledge for me. I wanted to access that knowledge being at a, dare I say, privileged position, but I had motivations and reasons to do so, because I wanted to not only produce this research, but I also wanted to liberate myself based on my experiences, and to see the interrelationship between my experiences and their experiences. So what was lived experiences for them? It was knowledge for me as a researcher. And I wanted to access that knowledge from a privileged position. But when I say in my dissertation that the privileged class or the elite class cannot access that knowledge, that I say because they don't have motivations or reasons to do so, and because they don't connect to the working class, as the theory says. They are two different classes, but I might be at a privileged position when I see myself as a researcher, but I also sometimes see myself as a part of working class or the same group as my participants were. And this was a conscious effort that I did throughout my research to to break these power relations between myself and my participants and become a part of them. That was a part of ethnography that I did, and that's why I spent this much time in the field, so that by the time I start doing actually my formal research activities and starting my formal research methods, I'm almost a part of them. I don't know if I've answered your question sufficiently. But
Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I go now to the third opponent this morning. That is Dr. Adnar Hussain. He is Assistant Professor of Gender Studies at the University of Utrecht. Him is the floor. So.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to engage. Nashia, congratulations, Nashia, for the wonderful thesis that you produced, and it was really an enjoyable read. One of the things I wondered while reading your thesis was whether you had experienced or you're experiencing some kind of a tension between your wanting to make some theoretical intervention and also wanting to make some contributions to the field of policy. The reason I ask this question is because there's often this assumption that these two fields do not sit in a comfortable way. And I wonder whether that was the case. So I have a second strand related, question, which is then what is your strategy in terms of making people take your thesis seriously, right? I mean, of course, it's very much focused on policies and there are clear contributions that can lead to changes. But then if you have a strategy, or whether you thought about strategy so that the different stakeholders would take them seriously, like the INGOs, the local NGOs and the government, right? So, yeah.
Esteemed opponent, thank you for appreciating my research, and thank you for this really important question of taking my research further. First thing, of course, there was this tension, and myself having educational experience about policy and governance, and I was clearly not a very theoretical person when I started this journey. And I might still not be a very theoretical person while ending this journey, but I'm okay. So I found myself trying all the time about this tension between theory and my practical things, because I really knew what to do about how to lead my findings towards policy. But I actually struggled, to be honest, I actually struggled with having theoretical contributions, getting out theoretical contributions of my research. But I did it somehow. It was difficult, but I learned. It was a great learning for me, and I had to really work hard to do this. About the second thing, and about taking this research further so that it is taken seriously by policymakers and NGOs. So I actually I am starting to write a policy brief about it. I thought to write a policy brief about it, a small one, because I know nobody is going to read this 200 pages. So it will be a small one with policy recommendations for all the stakeholders. And I'm also planning to send that policy brief not only to NGOs and INGOs that I know and that were included in my research, but also to ministries in Pakistan, so that they know that the law can be improved and the practice of early marriage can be reduced these ways. I had the NGOs that I included in my research are, I know them, and I have had a meeting with one of them recently, and we were thinking of indeed making, because they already have consultations with the government of Pakistan about, and they lobby about child marriage law. So we were thinking of taking this policy brief to the government level through them, so including them, so that we are a strong team. So there's a lot of work that we need to do. Still, this dissertation is not the end of it. This is the start of the work that I'm going to do for young girls in Pakistan.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. The next opponent I introduced to you is Dr. Connie Roggebrand. Welcome. She's Assistant Professor of Gender Studies. Sorry, she's Associate Professor of Public Policy and Governance at our own university. Yours is the floor.
Thank you very much. Dear candidate, I also want to start with congratulating you on concluding this very ambitious dissertation project in which you so carefully examined the decision-making process around minor marriages in Pakistan. I think it's an ambitious project in many ways, not only because you combine policy analysis with ethnographic methods to trace how the different actors approach the issue and navigate all the sensitivities, but also because you're dealing with such a complex and highly sensitive issue. It requires, I think, a lot of research skills and personal investment. And I think you did this very well. You immersed yourself and your daughter within this local community. And I can read from your thesis, it's not been an easy journey, and my compliments on this undertaking such a brave endeavor. My question is about your policy analysis, particularly also more about the method. And I think you nicely show that they don't align too well with these family decision processes and also the outcomes related to early marriage. But I want to teach you a little bit more, because for this analysis, you propose to use critical frame analysis, which I think, in my view, is a very good choice, because this method allows you to critically examine policy text, not just what the text actually says or what is written on paper, but also beyond that. Because it allows us, it's a method that allows us to examine, I think, a deeper layer of policies, not only by asking what is represented as the problem or seen as the causes, the consequences, and the preferred solutions to that problem, but also teasing out the gendered assumptions and the power dynamics that underlie such problem representations and the implications of that. So in that sense, I think I'm not fully convinced that you're using the method to its full potential, because you rightfully point to some differences and inconsistencies across the policies. I somewhat miss a deeper reflections on what implicitly and explicitly in the policies is constituted as the problem, if at all, and what are the gendered assumptions and implications here. So I want to kindly invite you to elaborate a little bit more on this. What does this deeper layer of these policies tell us about how child marriages or early marriages are governed in Pakistan?
Esteemed opponent, thank you so much for inviting me to speak about it. So when I started analyzing the policies, and I thought that I decided to employ a critical frame analysis method, I was really convinced that this method will be the best to understand my policies. It was good, but when I was actually analyzing the policies, I couldn't, maybe because of my lack of knowledge and experience, I couldn't actually or I couldn't actually find out where to start. I could understand the framework, and I knew where I can, what I can do, how deeper I can go using this framework. But the starting point, I actually struggled with finding a starting point of policy analysis, because it was indeed equipped to take me deeper into the policy, but I had to start from the surface. And I started to look at other policy analysis method. I found this feminist policy analysis by McPhail. And I found out that if I combine these two methods, I'll be better equipped to start from the surface and then go deeper into the policy. Your question about what problems that I saw in the policy in the deeper layer was mainly one about the incident reporting mechanisms, because the policy is it says that the policy seems to assume like programmatic literature, like what I found in programs and in the development literature, that it's the men, especially the fathers and brothers, who need to be blamed for child marriage, or who can be put to jail and who are fined and all. When the and that was contrary to what I found in my research, from my data. So the policy seems to miss important stakeholders. I'm not in favor of putting also grandmothers to jail. No, that won't help. I want the policy to at least acknowledge that there can be more than one stakeholder and one decision maker, and there can be so the decision making process that I explained is a vast one. The decisions are taking place in layers, multiple layers. How can one person be blamed for a decision that took place? The incident, coming to the second, the incident reporting mechanism, the law requires somebody who has observed, but usually in villages, people don't go and complain of their neighbors. It's not a norm because they're all cousins of one another and they're a big family. The law requires somebody, including the girl, that can be the girl also who is about to get married, to go and tell the union council that she's about to that somebody is forcing them or asking them to get married before she's 16 years or when she's under 16. This incident reporting mechanism is not possible because usually in the systems of in societies where the patriarchal system is so deep rooted, no neighbor is going to tell that my neighbor is doing a child marriage in their home. No, it will be the girl. If she's convinced enough that she doesn't want to get married, it will most likely be the girl to go and tell. But then there is no place to come back. So if she goes and tell and complain against her family that they are about to give her into marriage before she's 16 years old, where will she go? There are no safe places for girls to go back. And if she comes back to, after reporting the complaint, she comes back to the family and she cannot actually live in the house or live safely in the house, because some family members will be paying fine because of her and some family members might go into jail because of her. So that's what the policy lacks, the backup mechanisms, the backup options that the girl can avail if she dares complain against it. I recommend in my chapter 9, we already have a very nice, in Punjab especially, we already have a very nice domestic violence law, under which we have domestic protection, women protection centers in almost every village or in one in two villages. That's why I recommended using already established infrastructure and already employed people who are there to help women and to save if they want to be saved. I don't like the word protection and saving, but if they want to be protected, if they need protection and they say that they want to be saved, there is already a structure that is helping do it. So I want the policies to change that incident reporting mechanism somehow and take help of the already established infrastructure so that the law can actually be implemented and the girls have somewhere to go if they complain against it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next opponent, last but not least of this first round, Professor Isa Bout. She's emeritus professor of governance and inclusive development at our own university. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Dear candidate, I very much enjoyed reading your thesis. It's a really strategic topic that you've tackled, and you've tackled it also in an unusual way by looking at the whole context in which young women find themselves when the question of early marriage, as you've just described, takes place. This issue of how to empower young women to be able to make more informed choices is a process which concerns not only themselves, as you rightly show, but their family and the wider community around them, which you have described very well in your multi-layered ecosystems model. I think that's really an important contribution that you've made. I find that embedding particularly useful because it gets away from the simple discussions on how to empower young women without taking into account the situations in which they find themselves. And that whole context of, say, the different generations, the different castes, and the decision-making processes in themselves together provide a much more complex and much more nuanced understanding of such processes. And I particularly like that because you talk about the role of NGOs, Pakistani NGOs, whose members come from an urban background, but who design measures for working in the rural areas with young women there. You suggest that the framings that they have actually do not recognize the situation that you have analyzed, where young women are embedded in social networks in their villages, so they cannot actually be approached directly, as it were. But they have to be approached as part of a much wider social network with other stakeholders who are more powerful than they. So the way that they work currently does not actually offer appropriate means of empowerment. So my question to you is, by questioning their own positionality, these NGO workers, can they recognize knowledge of local stakeholders like grandmothers more effectively and start to develop more effective mechanisms for helping, for actually restructuring the ways that they try to empower young women? Could you say a bit more about that?
Yeah, highly esteemed opponent. Thank you so much for appreciating my work, and thank you for letting me speak about this very this issue that I really wanted to talk about. So when I went into, first thing first about caste, when I went into the field, I was also from an urban background who has who I think it was my second or third visit to any village. So I didn't know much about it, and I thought it will be people like us. They were, but then there were systems that for example, caste system, I only read about it, that this system used to prevail years ago, and this was a really exploitative system. When I went into the field, it was my first time that I actually observed how this system works. Like in cities, we still have castes, but we don't brag about it, and we don't usually in our day-to-day interaction, we don't position ourselves based on our caste. We have other things to maybe brag about. But in the villages, it was the caste, the social caste, that was most prevalent in their day-to-day interactions, including their decision of in which part of the village they will live, in which schools they will access to, which schools their children will go to, and or in a village gathering, at what place they will sit, on which chair maybe they will sit. This all was most of it was determined about their caste, from their caste. This was my first interaction with this so deep-rooted caste system, and I couldn't also, and I had interviewed, I had met these NGO people even before then, but and I had read their content and programs and the activities they design, and there was no mention of caste system there. I also was a part of a few of their very nice activities that they were conducting in the village where I was doing my research. I was a part of them, and what I noted, I had this caste system and this caste differences in my mind already, but seems like they didn't. So what I observed is that the participants were of one caste, the uppermost caste, in two of the activities that I observed. So they used to do, I think, one activity per month or two activities per month. But I realized that most of their participants are those belonging to upper caste. And if there were mixed caste gatherings, it was the people of upper caste who were more actively participating and telling about their experiences and their ideas. And they were, and people of comparatively lower castes were more silent, or they were just taking what the people of upper caste had said. Reason, because people of upper, so whenever important decisions are made in the village, people of comparatively lower caste would also consult people of upper caste. So chaudhris, in case of my research, chaudhris were the uppermost caste. They were consulted before taking any important decisions, so that if the decisions go wrong or if there are any disputes or something, they might take side of they might support, because they were already in the decision. So that's why people didn't want to contradict or go against people of upper caste. People of lower caste didn't want to go against people of upper caste. This is, and I think if it's a mixed gathering and if people of only upper caste are speaking, they were all women. Both the activities were all women activities. So if women of upper caste are participating and saying something, women of lower caste wouldn't interfere or wouldn't go against it. This is why I think their activities were not as effective as they could have been if they had taken caste system into consideration and included, and if they would have included conducted separate sessions for people of separate caste groups, or included people of all caste groups and considered and recognized that people of certain caste might not speak in a mixed gathering.
Please, could you conclude your answer, please?
Yes, and second, very quickly, was about inclusion of certain stakeholders. So I found that the grandmothers had a lot of time, free time, and they could have done a lot more than just sitting and making decisions about what to cook. I feel that NGOs could have used grandmothers as a resource, and as people who have as women who are really powerful and have very thick agency and decision making power and a lot of time. If they use it as a resource, use them as a resource, they will be really better implementing their projects and activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I go back to Dr. Parks for her second question.
Thank you. I wanted to turn to a question that's about your data chapters, really. And I was very interested in the theme of violence. It wasn't a major theme that you wrote about, but it seemed to recur again and again when you spoke about the data that you collected in the villages. So, for example, you spoke about how domestic violence and the threat of violence constraining women's agency around decision making around marriage. And you also spoke about how marriage decision making was sometimes linked to protecting girls from dishonor or forms of violence. So it seemed to be sort of bubbling away there. And I just wondered if you could say a little bit more about how you feel that violence came up as a theme in the discussions that you were having in the villages.
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for this very important question. Violence indeed came out from my data, but I found that if I include or build upon this as a theme, I will get too distracted or too far away than my actual topic. But violence was something that women and generally my participants took too natural. They thought that, okay, violence, they didn't seem to criticize, or they didn't seem to criticize violence as a part of their society. They thought that it is there and it will be there and it can't be changed. A lot of women mentioned that they didn't like the decisions the grandmother, so their mothers-in-law, had made about their daughters, but they and when I asked them that why did they not say this to them, and why did they let this happen to one of the, for example, my participants mentioned that her daughter was married as a child and she died of childbirth. And now her second daughter was about to get married at 15. And when I asked her why she did not go against this decision, she mentioned that she doesn't want to be beaten up, because if the grandmothers tell her husband that okay, I disagreed, or I'm going against the decision, she might face violence and she might get a divorce, which was a very big thing, a stigma, and a very big unfortunate thing in the village, because then she wouldn't have any other house to go to, because in their culture it was not very prevalent that okay, that if she gets divorced she can go back to her parents' house, because that's another plethora of problems that she will face. Violence was taken too for granted in my community, and even young girls who wanted to do something other than marriage also seemed to agree with getting married, because they didn't want to be to face violence, or to be bad girls and ending up hearing bad comments from somebody. It starts from being a bad girl, then to really big things, including in some cases the threat of honor killings, that if people find out that okay, their sisters or their daughters are for example falling in love with somebody, this is seen as a big dishonor to the family. And if it is out of caste, then definitely a really even bigger dishonor, because they don't want to get their daughters married to in another caste, especially if it is a lower caste. It is the biggest dishonor. And that can bring a lot of violence, and to escape or to not get violence, and to be good girls and not face that violence and problems associated with that, girls seem to girls and mothers, so young girls, generation 2 and generation 3, they seemed to compromise their wishes and desires and their ambitions, just to not be beaten up or facing that violence.
Well, thank you very much. We have only a few minutes left, and I would like to give the floor to Dr. Hossain, our guest from University of Utrecht, for his second question.
I mean, I don't really have any more questions, because some of the things that I wanted to ask have already been covered. But let me take this opportunity to actually congratulate Nashia once again for the wonderful piece of work that she has produced. And I hope that it will continue to inspire academics and policymakers alike in bringing about real change. That's something that I think she wants. So, and congratulations to the promoters and the committee.
Okay.
Thanks.
Just a few minutes to live. Professor Bakke, for a very short question this time.
Yes, very short question this time, pertaining to some of the things that need to happen that you present in your thesis. Collective ijtihad. Can you speak a little bit more about that? Who, how, especially since we've established that life experiences and knowledge are connected, knowledge is embodied. Who and how does this collective ijtihad take place?
So ijtihad takes place on can take place on various levels. Individuals who are trained or who have education related to Islam can do ijtihad, and then ijtihad can also take place on state levels where they have Islamic councils. For example, in Pakistan, we have this Islamic Council of Islamic Ideology Council, who have really trained people, and some of them are really progressive also. They're equipped to do ijtihad. So ijtihad is basically looking at modern world problems from a perspective of Quran and Sunnah, so that we don't have those 1400 years solutions that are 1400 years old, but solutions that are relevant to 21st century. They are the people who are equipped, and then it can also happen. So when I talk about forming an ijma, that is a union of different state level. We have a lot of Islamic countries in our region in South Asia. I would say we have a number of Islamic countries. So Islamic scholars, trained Islamic scholars from those countries and maybe from other parts of the world can also build a network and then do a collective ijtihad on international level, maybe to design modern solutions for problems that have emerged maybe later, or that have become a problem maybe because of the context of this 21st century. They might not have been problem 1400 years ago, but they are indeed a problem now because they have a lot of negative consequences. So they look at those problems with a fresh perspective and come up with collective ijtihad and tell us about a minimum good age of marriage for girls and boys, and about domestic violence and about intra-family marriages, maybe. That these problems came out as side findings of my research that I might want to take on later in some time. But we need ijtihads, and we need rulings about them based on from progressive Islamic scholars.
Hora est.
Dear candidate, we have now come to the conclusion of your defense, and I would like to end this part of our meeting by reading by you the last part of the academic formula.
Thank you. So, having thus concluded the defense of my thesis to the best of my ability and pending the decision of doctorate committee, I should like to express my sincere thanks to my highly esteemed supervisors, in particular, as well as to those who have so courteously brought forward their criticisms, and to all who have honored this ceremony with their presence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the committee will now retire for some further deliberation. Thank you.
Okay, I think we have all returned into the main session. So, dear Rector, the floor is yours. And please unmute yourself.
Esteemed candidate, after due consideration of the thesis you have submitted and defended, we have decided to grant you the doctoral degree. Professor Gupta is authorized to confer this dignity on you in the customary fashion. Please, Professor Gupta.
I most willingly accept the task assigned to me by the Rector Magnificus of the University. By virtue of the power conferred on us by law, and in accordance with the decision of the Rector and the Doctorate Board of the University of Amsterdam, I hereby confer upon you, Nashia Ajaz, the degree of doctor, and grant you all the rights pertaining thereto by law or custom. In evidence hereof, you will be presented at a later time with a degree certificate, signed by the rector and the supervisors and confirmed with the Great Seal of the University. Having thus fulfilled the task assigned to me, I have the honor of being the first to address you as a doctor and to congratulate you with the dignity conferred on you. I now hand over to my co-promoter for the personal address.
Thank you. Dear Nashia, I'm not sure I'm the best person to speak right now because I just feel like dancing a little jig. But I have the honor of speaking a few words to you upon the obtaining of your doctoral degree, and you now bearing the title of doctor. So with my heart pounding in my chest, part due to the momentous occasion and part due to me bursting with pride to see you here, I have a few words. What a journey it has been, and what work you have done. Our collaboration started early 2017 when you joined the program group on governance and inclusive development, and specifically the research team involved in the Her Choice program. Our team had been tasked with doing the impact evaluation of the 5-year Her Choice program, which was funded by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and which was implemented in rural settings in 10 countries in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, including Pakistan. The program sought to increase young women's choice in decisions as to if, when, and whom they married. And within that program, we had space for in-depth qualitative research, which was done by, among other people, yourself, and Rashmila Shakya, who we fully expect to see here shortly, defending her work. We have had numerous discussions about the notion of choice and her choice, and what this choice of words implied with regard to conceptions of autonomy, and specifically the possibilities of the individual young woman to decide herself about the if, when, and who and whom of marriage. Was it not more helpful to depart from the premise that these decisions were always interdependent? But beyond these questions, you noted early on that while the program, the Her Choice program, was geared towards enhancing her space to make her choice, we actually knew rather little about how these decisions were being made. Who decided on the if, the when, and the whom? So you embarked on the open-ended question as to who was involved how in these decision-making processes, parking the commonly held assumption, which could be summarized as, it's the patriarch, stupid. Your examination of gender equality policy documents allowed you to reflect on how these spoke to the dynamics and relations you'd encountered on the ground, and to formulate recommendations for their improvement. Well, you've already seen the term minor marriage being used by the committee. So let's see where this takes us. In the process, you drew on the rich array of theoretical and methodological tools. Numerous bodies of scholarly work were engaged with. Suffice to say, the book that we have before us today is but a fraction of the text that flowed from your fingertips. But there are two central points I believe stand out when looking back on your PhD adventure. First, when embarking on your PhD,
You had to adopt a new way of reading and writing and analyzing, including learning to take the space to be critical of the work of other scholars. Articulating your own thoughts and reaching your own conclusions was something you had to make your own. And in so doing, you had to learn that critical engagement with the work of others was not disrespectful, but was in fact expected. Second, and you already referred to this as well, but you gathered rich data in very difficult circumstances. And I think it's due to your determination, unwavering good humor, and what was also mentioned in the defense just now, your bravery, that we stand here today. That and your impressive support network. Your affiliation to a foreign institution and focus on questions regarding gender required you to particular care in how you spoke about your research to different people. And this became really clear in relation to your word, to your use of the word agency in your research proposal. You received anonymous phone calls asking which agency you were working for, which agency were you researching. And the threatening nature of these encounters made it very clear that the notion of agency was best left for what it was, in any case whilst in Pakistan. Your time in the Netherlands was at times marred by racist encounters, whilst as a young divorced mother, your mobility back home could not always be taken for granted. Establishing yourself in the village where you did your research, largely unaccompanied by a male figure, successfully gathering your data, there have been so many victories along the way. So Dr. Nashia Ajaz, in conclusion, you're now embarking on another adventure, this time in Turkey, accompanied of course by your wonderful daughter Sajal, your parents and I believe sisters. Judging by how you found your feet in the strangeness that is the Netherlands and the world of academia, knowing your social and cultural agility, I'm positive you'll fare well. In closing, I trust, nay, I fully depend on you using your title as doctor when you book your ticket to Istanbul. And I look forward to celebrating the conclusion of this remarkable trajectory with you in person. Thank you.
Regard the obtained dignity as an honor and a privilege, and never forget the attendant responsibilities which you now have towards science and society.
Dear Dr. Ajaz, it's my pleasure to congratulate you also on behalf of the University Board and the Doctorate Board of the University of Amsterdam on this newly acquired honor. And herewith, ladies and gentlemen, I conclude this special meeting of the Doctorate Board of our university. Thank you very much for participating.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Dr. Ajaz, you did it.
Thank you.
Hi, welcome. We have some time for some more informal congratulations. So, dear Chair, may I give the floor to you?
Thank you very much. Dear Dr. Ajaz, my congratulations with your thesis and the defense. I enjoyed it very much. And as a practical planner, which I've been for a long time, I very much enjoyed the importance you have told us of what sometimes I call tacit knowledge and practical knowledge, and trying them to connect it with theoretical knowledge. I wish you very much luck in your new job, and I hope you have a great career in front of you. And all the participants of this morning, our colleagues from abroad, London and Utrecht, I thank you very much for participating and for taking the trouble to prepare your questions and to join this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Maybe the committee members would like to say something?
Yes, I'd like to say congratulations as well, Dr. Ajaz. That's fantastic. You really defended yourself well with lots of You spoke very, very clearly and engagingly in response to our questions, which was great. It was also kind of a pleasure to read a thesis that has so many kind of practical and policy implications. So I'm looking forward to seeing that, but also your academic contribution. It'd be great to see the papers coming out, I think, around this kind of the complex power dynamics that operate in families in relation to policy and decision making on marriage. And I think, you know, there's obviously papers that come directly from particular chapters, but also I think picking up some of the other themes like violence that we were just talking about at the end, like maybe education as well. There's kind of other themes that maybe you'll be able to pick up again in your writing as you go forward. So fantastic. Look forward to reading your work as you continue to develop your career.
Thank you.
Yes, I would like to join all these congratulations. Congratulations, Dr. Ajaz, and congratulations to your wonderful supervisors. Your thesis and your defense today really speak of or reflect your hard work, your skills, not in the least your ethnographical skills. I think that was commented upon a lot today. Your intelligence, your passion runs through this thesis as well, and through your defense, and also your leadership. It's already clear that you are going to change things and terminologies and have recommendations in place, and the world will hear about them. So congratulations for all of that. And yes, that formula that speaks of your responsibility that comes with the title, I think it's your responsibility to continue your work. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I also want to congratulate you, Dr. Ajaz, because it's been a wonderful defense. Congratulations also to your daughter. She just disappeared, but it was so nice seeing her because she's part of your work, right? And congratulations to the family and to your friends. I think it's a great work, and I also fully trust that you will take this. You carry the flag, right? Because you did so today in your defense. You laid out a full program of what's coming next. And I think that's just wonderful. So again, I think you did a brave and ambitious job with this thesis, and I think the agenda that now comes again is ambitious, but it's very worthwhile. And I wish you a lot of good luck with it and success. So thank you.
Thank you.
Indeed, congratulations on completing the thesis and also on the way that you've gone through this whole process. I particularly like your combination of both theoretical positioning on the one hand, but also the way that you translate that into more empirical and policy, but policy at various different levels, including that of decision-making within families, but also NGOs and the non-problematic, say the problematic, in a sense, position of NGOs working in the villages and among the families concerned, who still have to recognize the framings that they may not do from an urban perspective on caste and say regional differences. So I'm very curious about your work that you're going to do in Turkey, and hope to see more of what comes out there and the comparative perspectives that you'll have. Many congratulations and a great deal of success in the coming years.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I would also like to take a moment to congratulate you. Congratulations. It was a very, I think it was a defense, like a very well defended, I would say. And you really came across as very confident, and you are confident, right? So that was really nice, because I mean, even at our levels, we're all kind of often nervous when you have to do public speaking, but I really enjoyed the confidence with which the way you exuded it. Yeah, that's quite something that I really enjoyed. Of course, there are comments on the contents and methodologies, so I'm not going to repeat those. So, and I also understand that it was really a difficult kind of journey, having being a single mother and all of that needs to be acknowledged as well, right? And so congratulations also to all the people that supported you, not just the ones that were part of the procedure in a formal way, but also family members, including a daughter who I also met briefly in Amsterdam, I think, a few times. So it was always a pleasure, having her around you and also working and, like juggling your deadlines and putting her in the daycare. So I remember those. So I think, yes, it's a moment to celebrate. And I'm sure that, we will continue to work on those. And yeah, so thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And in online defenses, nobody can see the shaking legs. So.
Dr. Ajaz, let me also congratulate you. I'm so proud of you. And I think we struggled a lot with the theory, but you managed to weave everything together in such a convincing way. I think your findings are really innovative and very useful for practice. I congratulate you upon your new position in Turkey. I wish you all the best. We will surely be in touch to work on some further output on the basis of your formidable thesis. Thank you also for being a very social person in the GID group. I think you were a very positive force and always very much engaged with the other PhDs and with staff, which I really appreciate. So have a great celebration.
Thank you.
And Nashia, I'm hoping that this is not the end of our friendship, but that it will be the start of a long relationship on not just this issue, but perhaps also on looking at how we can make different theories more sympathetic and more contextual for other religious approaches, and how we can modernize or create scope for example, your whole storyline of gender empowerment versus gender equality. Also for your whole story on the Ijtihad and the Ijmas. And I really hope that you are able to push this particular angle where you combine gender issues, Islamic knowledge, Islamic law, Islamic policy, Islamic culture, as well as the context, because maybe now you're going to be in Turkey, it'll be a different context in some ways. So I'm really hoping we will stay in touch on these issues and that we will move forward together, and that you're always welcome to join our GID PhD meetings, if only to say hello to everybody. And I wanted to say to all the other examiners, I had really hoped to meet you all face to face so that we could build better relationships with you and learn from you. We are doing development studies and we do occasionally venture into gender. It's not like we do gender studies full time. So I had really hoped that this would be a very good way for us to also enhance our understanding of gender issues more broadly and build relations with you for maybe mainstreaming it a little bit into our work. It is now there, but it's not entirely mainstreamed. Alas, this was just on Zoom. So perhaps at some other point, we will try to make contact with you in other ways. Once more, thank you so much for taking the time to read the theses and for participating in this defense.
Thank you very much for all your kind words. And maybe the paronyms would like to add a few words. Shahana and Musika, you must be very proud of Nashia.
Yeah, no, I mean, I promised myself that I wouldn't cry, but I was crying. I think this is my new job now, to cry for everyone who defends among my friends. But no, I mean, Dr. Nashia, we promised her that this is how we will call her for the next 5 years, right? So very proud of you. I mean, exactly what Anand Bhai was also saying, that, we saw you through quite a lot. Single mom to single mom, we were there for one another even for a brief moment of time. So I know like how much you put in the effort to get this done. This is as much your success as it is for Sajal as well. What an amazing kid. To have been there with you through this entire journey. Those of us coming from the South Asian activist background, we always think that, hey, we know the solution to especially issues like child marriage. And then, you pick up a thesis like this, and it really makes you question so many things that you think that you just know. And you then go like, no, actually, there's more to this story than that. So I think that it's not just when it comes to Pakistan, but for the region. I think this is such an interesting and such an important piece of work. Already telling quite a number of my colleagues back home that, one should actually pick up this thesis and, look into it. So thank you so much for doing this work, doing this hard work, and giving us something that we can really make great tangible use. So yes, so this is wonderful. And, have an incredible, celebration despite lockdowns and COVID and family issues and whatnot, and, go forth and, conquer. Take care, my friend. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks.
Mustika, would you like to add something?
Yeah, congratulations, Nashia. You are inspiring, and also I'm so proud of you. And you have been a very good friend in the room. We really love you to have you in our small room together, and with the writing process. When you are here, it's really we bond a lot of friendship. And I'm so proud of you, and I wish you the best for the next journey in Turkey. And I'm also so proud and also happy to read your thesis, and also I hope it's also inspired our younger generation and our daughters to be a better future for them, for our daughters.
Thank you so much.
Well, Dr. Ajaz, do you want to add something?
Thank you so much, everybody, for reading the book that I couldn't read when I was preparing for the defense. It was really hard to read it, but I'm glad you all read it, and you are really, you have this much energy and patience to read it. Thank you for all your patience, and thank you for being here today with me. Thanks.
Okay, well, let's conclude this meeting. Thank you very much for your online participation in this session. Nashia, I will send you later today the PhD statement as I have promised, and we will keep in touch about all the other official documents. And I wish all of you a very nice day, and especially to our young doctor, and celebrate it because you did it finally. Thank you so much, and hopefully we will see each other next time in real life. Have a nice day. Goodbye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice day.
Thank you, everybody. Bye. Thank you, Len.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
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 Bye. Thanks.